The second reading is from James chapter 5. Be patient, therefore, beloved, until the coming of the Lord. The farmer waits for the precious crop from the earth, being patient with it until it receives the early and the late rains. You must also be patient. Strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. Beloved, do not grumble against one another, so that you may not be judged. See, the judge is standing at the doors. As an example of suffering and patience, beloved, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. The word of the Lord.
Wait. It was the next command that they were teaching me and Blake in basic doggy training class. And as the trainers explained it, wait was taught at a doorway because it would help the dogs understand that when you told them wait, they weren't to go into the next room until you told them it was okay to do so. But I personally didn't care if Blake waits to go into the next room, so I thought, what use could this command ever be? It seemed like a big waste of time. But as we got into learning this command, I found out that wait was actually really kind of important. Wait meant do not go into the street until I tell you it's okay to do so. Wait meant you don't jump out of the car until I have your leash on you and tell you you can do so. And maybe most importantly, wait also meant you don't go out the front door of the house or even the sliding glass door of the house, even if there's a squirrel, until I tell you it's okay. Wait, as it turned out, was a really important command, and honestly, Blake is a lot better at it than I am. And I think probably the reason that I initially resisted learning wait is that I so much hate to wait. All the time in my life, I think wait is just kind of a waste. And I resist it, and I don't want to wait, and that is why I have high-speed internet at work and at home. And I expect speeds that were unimaginable just a couple of years ago. And I complain bitterly if I have to wait for a page to load. I hate to wait, and that is why I have Amazon Prime. And I still complain that I have to wait 2 days to get back. And I hate to wait so much, and I'm a little bit more nutty maybe about this than some people are, that I will drive way out of my way and spend a lot more time getting home so that I don't have to sit and wait in traffic. And as some of you know, I live on the other side of 355, and while they've been repaving, there's this itty-bitty tiny bump, and I'm behind people in great big SUVs who have to come to a complete stop and go over the bump. So rather than wait through all that, I drive through Old Town, and I go all over creation because I don't gotta wait. I just don't want to wait. Probably you don't either. And that is why I sometimes have a real difficult time during the season of Advent. Advent is all about waiting. We hear all of these stories about waiting and why we're called as Christians to wait. And we're not just called to wait for Christmas. We're called to wait for the unveiling of God's future for us. We're called to wait to see what God is about to reveal to us for our own kind of personal future in the midst of a lot of chaos, confusion, and change in our lives. We're called to wait even to see what God is going to do at the end of time for the whole world and for everybody who's in it. And I know I gotta wait, but I don't like to wait. And I don't like to read verses about waiting. So when we get to James today in the second reading, where James says, be like the farmer. The farmer's gotta wait, be patient. Yeah. But I don't want to wait. Because so often in my history, and maybe in yours too, waiting had really negative connotations. I remember when I was a kid, and it was getting close to Christmas, and I would start bugging my parents about what's in the box. What am I getting for Christmas? Can I shake the box? Can I rattle the box? Can I look at the box? No, you're going to have to wait. And what wait really meant in that context was try not to think about it. Take your mind off it, ignore it, focus on something else. But that's really hard, and I don't want to focus on something else. And just being told, go ignore something, I don't like that, and so often that's what weight has meant in my life. Weight sometimes also meant, also when I was a kid, sometimes weight just really meant no. It's not going to happen. So I would say to my grandparents, hey, my grandparents all live pretty close to the beach. Are we going to be able to go to the beach? Well, we'll have to wait and see what the day brings. And that generally meant, nah, probably not. But you didn't really want to say no, but weight just sounded like no. And I, as an adult, I hear politicians talk about this. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens with the economy, blah, blah, blah. That means no. It's probably not going to happen. And I don't like weight when weight means no. And then still so often in my life, and probably in yours too, wait just means sit and do nothing. It's like sitting in traffic. You can't do anything. Just sit there. And I don't idle well. So I don't like any of those connotations of wait. But as I started to think about some of these wait passages, especially the one from James, where he says you got to wait like a farmer, it occurred to me that the kind of waiting we're called to do as Christians is not like the kind of waiting that I was told to do as a kid. The kind of waiting that a farmer does is not about forgetting about stuff, but about paying attention and focusing. The farmer, when the farmer waits, has to be able to never forget about the crops, even if there's soil, if there's seeds sitting in the soil. You never forget. You're always watching. You're watching for the next thing, and you're paying attention, and you're being ready for the next thing that's going to happen, because everything that happens, you've got to do something different. You've got to water things, you've got to eventually be ready for the harvest, but there are things that if you're trained to look for that stuff, you see the changes. That's what you got to do when you wait. You really do need to pay attention. I thought about that even with my doggy training classes, because the trainers always tell us, whenever you give a dog a command, the dog should watch you and pay attention. And Blake is like his dad. Except that when I tell him to wait, he does watch me. He keeps an eye on me. He waits for me to tell him, it's okay, now you can go and do whatever it is you're going to do. Do we do that in our waiting? Are we watching for the signs of God working in our lives? Are we paying attention even to the small things, to the little things that show us that God is still at work in our lives? That's the kind of waiting that we're called to do. It's about paying attention. And that waiting is something that Advent really is all about. Waiting is also not about giving up hope. In fact, the opposite is true. It's about hope and expectation. If you had never seen, seeds grow in the ground, you would see this barren field and go, nothing can ever come from that. But the farmer looks at that and goes, there's potential here. This is going to grow. This is going to be something new and different, and is sure of that. The hope and expectation that we're called to is a way of waiting in which we don't just say, oh, well, God will do something eventually, but there's nothing happening here. And sometimes we read the text like that, because we read so many of these wait things about wait for God, wait for what Jesus is going to do at the end of time. Jesus is coming again. But honestly, after 2,000 years, most of us hear that the way my grandmother, when she said, yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see what the day brings. Yeah, maybe Jesus will come tomorrow, but probably not, so we just sort of give up on it. But what we should be waiting for and expecting is not just Jesus to come at the end of time, but for God to be acting in our lives today, tomorrow, and next month. Sometimes in small ways, in unnoticed ways, just like the farmer can see changes in the crops in small and unnoticed ways to other people, we should have that sense of hope and expectation. And we should be able to share that with others in our world who, frankly, so often have given up and hope and expect nothing. I even watch that, and I'm reminded of that when I do the wait thing with Blake, because Blake is absolutely certain that if he watches me, he's going to get a treat when I tell him to go, because he's waited. He's been good. And there is this look of expectation in his eyes, and you can see it. So I'm thinking, what about us? Do we convey that sense of hope and expectation to the world around us? Is that what our faith is about to others? Do they see in us, things are bad, things are gloomy a lot of the time, but we expect and we're sure that God's going to be doing something. That's the kind of waiting that Advent calls us to. And Advent also calls us, all these texts call us to also wait actively to do something, not just to sit back and go, well, God's going to do what God's going to do, and eventually maybe I'll do something, but I'm just going to sit here. We're called to actually prepare. The farmer cannot simply sit back and say, all right, I'll go on vacation for a few months, and when I come back, then we're ready for the harvest. And then I'll start getting stuff ready. It's too late then. You've got to actually be preparing things ahead of what's going to happen. And is that what we do? Are we actually preparing for God's future? And that can be hard because we don't know exactly what tomorrow or next week or next month or next year is going to look like. And I think sometimes when I think about preparing, I think about doing stuff. I need tasks. Kind of like getting ready for Christmas. I'm going to put up the tree, and I'm going to decorate, and I'm going to write some cards, and I'm going to bake some stuff, or whatever I'm going to do. But sometimes the preparing, the act of waiting and preparing that we're called to do, involves really imagining and praying and talking to one another about what it means to be God's people. Who are we? Why are we called together? What is it that God wants us to maybe do? So who should we be as God's people so that we can be ready to act? Those are things that I think a lot of the time in the past, Christian communities haven't really asked themselves, because we just figure, well, we're just going to do the same old stuff until Jesus comes. But I think now especially, we need to think in our lives about the kind of people God wants us to be so that we can be instruments of that future, even if we're not sure exactly what that future looks like. And that kind of prayer and discussion, talking with one another, imagining, that's part of the preparation, the active things we do while we wait. Because in the end, all of this waiting that we're called to, not just in Advent, but throughout our lives as Christians, is not a passive thing. It's not something where we sit back and do nothing. Rather, it's an active thing. And the kind of waiting that we're called to in Advent is about paying attention for God's signs in the world around us, even the small signs that are sometimes difficult to see, so that we don't miss out on them. The kind of waiting that we're called to is about living in expectation and hope, and sharing that expectation and hope with others in our world who may have given up. The kind of waiting we're called to is not sitting back and doing nothing, but actively dreaming, envisioning, imagining who we are and how we can be God's servants, so that we're going to be ready whenever it is that God calls to us.